3 years of marriage and my husband never touched me, not even once. When I finally discovered the reason, I realized I had wasted the best years of my youth on a lie. But that discovery also freed me in a way I never imagined. Today, I'm going to tell you this story I've kept for so long, and I hope it can help someone who's going through something similar. But first, let me ask you something. If you're enjoying this story, leave a like down below, subscribe to the channel, and comment which city you're watching from. I love knowing that people from all over are following these stories of overcoming. Now come with me, because what I'm about to tell you will deeply move you. My name is Sarah, I'm 59 years old today, but when this story began, I was only 24. It was 1990, and I lived in Springfield, in rural Ohio, in a simple house with my mother and my 2 younger sisters. My father had passed away 2 years earlier from a sudden heart attack, and since then, my mother worked as a housekeeper to support us. I also worked at a fabric store downtown. I earned a small salary, but it helped with household expenses. Life wasn't easy, but we made do. I had always been a modest girl, raised with traditional values. My mother, Margaret, was a devout evangelical and taught me from an early age that a proper young lady didn't throw herself at men, that you had to save your purity for marriage, that intimacy was sacred and could only happen after being married in church. I truly believed that. I'd never had a serious boyfriend, just some innocent teenage flirtations that went nowhere. At 24, I was a virgin and very proud of it. I thought I was doing the right thing, saving the best of myself for the man God had reserved for me. It was on a Sunday, in March 1990, that I met Robert. He had started attending the church we went to, a Pentecostal congregation in our neighborhood. He was a handsome young man, 28 years old, tall, dark hair slicked back with gel, always in a suit and tie, even in Springfield's unbearable heat. He had a serious, quiet manner, but polite. He worked as an accountant at an agricultural equipment company and lived alone in a small apartment. That caught attention because a single man living alone at 28 was rare at the time. Most stayed with their parents until they married. He started making conversation with me after services. Simple questions at first. How was I? Did I like the sermon? Did I know such and such person from church? I answered politely, but didn't encourage much conversation because I was afraid of seeming forward. But he persisted, always kind, always respectful, until one day he invited me for ice cream after evening service. I looked at my mother, asking permission with my eyes. She gave a discreet smile and nodded yes. We went to an ice cream parlor near the church, one of those old-fashioned ones with formica tables and a noisy ceiling fan. Robert ordered vanilla, and I ordered strawberry. The conversation was easy, natural. He told me he'd moved from Columbus 2 years ago to work in Springfield, that his parents still lived there, that he had a younger brother. He talked about his faith, how he'd been saved at 20, and since then followed the Lord's ways. I told him about my life too, about losing my father, working at the fabric store, my dreams of one day having my own home, maybe my own children. We officially started dating a week later. Robert asked to speak with my mother. He came to our house on a Saturday afternoon with a box of chocolates and a Bible under his arm. "Mrs. Margaret, I came here to ask your permission to date Sarah. My intentions are serious. I want to get to know her better and, God willing, maybe build a family." My mother was charmed by his formality, his respect. "Of course, Robert, you may date my daughter, but I want it to be a respectful courtship within Christian values." He readily agreed. The courtship was everything I'd always dreamed of. Robert was attentive, romantic in his own way. He took me for walks in the park, to eat at the town's cafes, to attend special services at other churches. He always picked me up at home and brought me back before 10 at night. He never tried anything beyond chaste kisses and brief hugs. I thought that was perfect, proof that he respected me, that he valued my purity. My mother kept saying I'd found a true man of God. There was one time, about 3 months after we started dating, when we were alone in his apartment. I'd gone to bring him a casserole my mother had made because he'd mentioned he had the flu. When I got there, he did look a bit down, with red eyes and a stuffy nose. I heated up the food for him, made tea, stayed there, taking care of him. After eating, he sat on the couch and pulled me close. We stayed there talking, and at one point the mood changed. He looked at me more intensely. He gently touched my face. My heart started beating faster. It was the first time we'd been completely alone with no one nearby. He leaned in and kissed me. A longer kiss than usual. I responded, feeling butterflies in my stomach, a mix of fear and curiosity, but when he realized things were heating up, he pulled away abruptly. "Sorry, Sarah. We can't. It's not right. God is watching." I felt breathless, a bit disappointed, but also relieved. He was proving again that he was a man of principles. 6 months into our relationship, Robert proposed to me. It was on a Sunday after service in front of the whole church. He knelt down, pulled a small box from his pocket with a modest silver ring with a tiny stone and said, "Sarah, will you marry me? Build a family? Serve God together until death do us part?" I didn't think twice. Yes, I will. The whole church applauded. My mother cried with emotion. My sisters jumped with joy. I was fulfilling my dream. I was going to marry in church with a God-fearing man. We set the wedding for 6 months later to have time to save money and organize everything. It would be simple, but in church, with a pastor, hymns, the dream wedding of any evangelical girl. Robert rented a small 2-bedroom house in a working-class neighborhood. We went together to choose the furniture, curtains, kitchen utensils. Everything we bought was a joy, a brick in building our future. During the engagement, we continued with that chaste courtship. Robert never crossed the line, never tried anything beyond innocent kisses. Some of my church friends found it strange. "My fiancé can barely wait for me," said Christine, a co-worker from the store who also attended church. "We have to control ourselves a lot not to sin before marriage. But your Robert seems like he doesn't even have the desire." I got irritated with these comments, defended my fiancé, saying he was different, that he had self-control, that he truly respected the commandments, and I believed it. The wedding day was beautiful. November 9th, 1990, a sunny Saturday. I married in white with a simple dress that my mother and a seamstress friend of hers made. Veil, wreath of artificial flowers, bouquet of daisies. Robert looked handsome in his navy blue suit, white tie, impeccable hair. The ceremony was moving. The pastor spoke about the sacrament of matrimony, about how man and woman become one flesh. We exchanged rings, kissed timidly in front of everyone, and left the church under rice. The reception was simple in the church hall. Finger foods, soda, a 3-tier cake my mother ordered. We danced the waltz, cut the cake, took photos. I was so happy I felt like I would burst. I was finally a married woman. I would finally have my own home, my own family. And finally, that night I would experience what all married women knew, the intimacy of marriage. When the party ended around 10 at night, we went to our house. Robert opened the door and picked me up to carry me over the threshold in the traditional way. I laughed nervously. He set me down, and then we stood there in the living room, looking at each other. I was nervous, obviously afraid, but also excited. It was the night I'd waited 24 years for. He seemed nervous too, running his hand through his hair, loosening his tie. "I'll shower first," he finally said. "You shower too, get ready, and we'll talk." I nodded. He went to the bathroom and I went to the bedroom. I opened the suitcase I'd brought and got the nightgown I'd bought especially for the wedding night. It was white, cotton, simple, but pretty, down to my knees. Nothing daring because that wasn't my style, but it was special. I changed clothes, brushed my teeth in the kitchen because he was in the bathroom, brushed my hair, put on light perfume. My heart was beating so hard I thought it would burst out of my mouth. Robert came out of the bathroom in pajamas, wet hair, entered the bedroom and saw me sitting on the edge of the bed. He looked at me for a long moment and then said, "You look beautiful, Sarah." I smiled shyly. "Thank you." He sat on the other side of the bed, keeping distance. We stayed in silence for a few minutes until I finally asked, "Are you nervous?" He nodded. Very. Me too, I said. But it's normal, right? It's the first time for both of us. He turned to me with a strange expression I couldn't decipher. Sarah, I was thinking, couldn't we wait until tomorrow? We're very tired. It's been a long day. I didn't understand. Tomorrow? But today is our wedding night. I know, he said, looking away. But I'm really exhausted, and I want it to be special. Not something done in a rush, with exhaustion. Tomorrow we'll be more rested. I was disappointed but understood. It really had been a long, stressful day. Okay, I agreed. Tomorrow then. He smiled with relief, kissed my forehead, and lay down on his side of the bed. I lay down on my side. We stayed there, side by side but not touching, until we fell asleep. And I had no idea that first night would turn into weeks, months, and eventually years of waiting for something that would never happen. The promised tomorrow never came. On Sunday morning, I woke up early with Robert already up, having coffee in the kitchen. He was dressed in a dress shirt and pants, ready to go to church. Good morning, honey, he said, giving me a quick kiss on the cheek. I made coffee and toast. Eat, because we have to leave for service soon. I sat there dazed, still processing that the night before hadn't been what I expected, but I thought that night when we returned would be different. We came back from church in the late afternoon, ate lunch that my mother had sent over, stayed in the living room talking about plans for the week, how he'd return to work on Monday, and so would I. When it started getting dark, I went to shower and get ready again. I put on the same nightgown from the night before, perfume, brushed my hair, entered the bedroom, and Robert was sitting on the bed reading the Bible. He looked at me and closed the book. Sarah, we need to talk about something. I sat next to him, my heart sinking. What? He took a deep breath. I have a problem that makes certain things difficult. I looked at him without understanding. What kind of problem? He blushed, looked away. It's a physical thing, but I'm treating it. I went to the doctor a few months ago and he gave me some medication. It'll get better, just needs time. I still didn't fully understand. A physical problem, like an illness? Not exactly, he said, getting redder. It's more of a difficulty, but it'll pass. I just ask that you be patient with me. I didn't know what to say. I'd been raised with no sex education whatsoever. I didn't understand anything about the male body, about what could go wrong. I just knew my husband was telling me he had a problem and needed time. And I, wanting to be a good wife, decided to be patient. Okay, Robert, we'll wait as long as necessary. He seemed so relieved that he hugged me tight. Thank you for understanding. You're a blessing in my life. The weeks went by. We returned to our routine of work, church, married life. Robert was a good husband in all other aspects. He helped with housework, did shopping with me, talked about our day. We watched television together at night, had dinner at the kitchen table, made plans for the future, but when night came and we went to bed, it was always the same thing. He'd turn to his side of the bed and sleep, or pretend to sleep. At first, I tried to initiate something. I'd move closer to him, put my hand on his shoulder, try a more intense kiss, but he always gently pulled away. Not today, honey. I'm very tired. Or I had a stressful day at work, or my head is hurting. There was always an excuse, and I, with no experience, not knowing how these things worked, accepted it. I thought it was normal, that men could also not be in the mood, that I had to respect that. After 2 months of marriage, my mother started asking subtle questions. So, daughter, any news to tell me? She wanted to know if I was pregnant. In her mind and mine too, until then, marriage meant children soon after. But how would I have a child if I hadn't even consummated the marriage? No, Mom, not yet. She frowned. Are you two using protection? I lied. We are. We want to enjoy just the two of us first. She didn't seem convinced, but didn't insist. The church ladies also started commenting. Rosemary, an older woman from the congregation, pulled me aside after service. Sarah, can I give you advice from a more experienced woman? Of course, Mrs. Rosemary. She lowered her voice. In the first months of marriage, it's important, how do I say this, to be a complete wife to your husband. Understand? If you refuse him too much, he might look elsewhere. I turned red with shame and anger. I don't refuse him anything, Mrs. Rosemary. She blinked in surprise. Oh, then that's good. Sorry if I meddled where I shouldn't. That left me thinking. Was the problem me? Was I not attractive enough? I started dressing up more, bought prettier sleepwear, started wearing light makeup, but nothing changed. Robert remained distant in that aspect. In everything else, we were a normal couple. We went out, talked, laughed together, but in intimacy, there was an invisible wall I couldn't break down. At 6 months of marriage, I tried to talk about it more directly. Robert, are you still taking those medications the doctor prescribed? He was washing dishes and stopped, becoming tense. I am. Why? Because it's been months and we still haven't. I couldn't finish the sentence. He sighed. Sarah, these things take time. It's not overnight that it gets resolved. I need you to continue being patient. But until when? I asked, feeling tears threatening. I want to be your wife for real. I want to have children. He interrupted me, coming to hug me. I know. I want that too. But pressuring me only makes it worse. You don't understand how difficult this is for me, how inadequate I feel. Your demands only make me more anxious. I felt enormous guilt. He was right. I was being selfish, thinking only of myself when he was suffering with a health problem. I'm sorry. I won't pressure you anymore. We'll go at the right pace. He kissed my forehead. Thank you for understanding. After that conversation, I stopped bringing up the subject. I pretended I didn't care, that everything was fine, but inside something was dying. My self-esteem plummeted. I started feeling ugly, undesirable, defective. I'd look in the mirror and see a woman that not even her own husband wanted to touch. I lost weight because I had no appetite. I got dark circles because I slept poorly. My mother noticed something was wrong, but I lied, said everything was great. It was around this time that I met Patricia. She was new at the fabric store, transferred from another location. She was a woman about 35, divorced, with no filter when speaking. During lunch break, the girls talked about husbands, about intimacy, and I always stayed quiet, having nothing to contribute. Until one day, Patricia asked me directly, "And you, Sarah, how is it with your husband? How long have you been married?" 6 months, I answered quietly. "And it's good." She narrowed her eyes. "Is it good, or are you saying it's good?" I felt embarrassed. The other girls laughed, thinking it was shyness. She's too shy to talk, right, Sarah? I smiled awkwardly and changed the subject. But Patricia kept watching me with that analytical look of hers. A few days later, she pulled me aside. "Can I ask you a personal question? Your husband, does he touch you?" I turned red. "That's very personal, Patricia." "I know, but I'm asking because I've noticed some things. You seem unhappy and have a neediness in your eyes that's not normal for a newlywed." I felt like crying right there. I couldn't hold back and told her everything. The 6 months without intimacy, the excuses, the health problem he claimed to have, the feeling of failing as a wife. Patricia listened without interrupting. When I finished, she shook her head. "Sarah, I don't want to scare you, but this isn't normal. A healthy 28-year-old man doesn't go 6 months without touching his wife, especially a pretty wife like you. Something's wrong here." "But he said he has a problem he's treating." She made a skeptical face. "What kind of problem? Have you seen a prescription? Seen him taking medicine?" I thought about it. No, I never had. That conversation planted a seed of doubt in my head. I started paying more attention. I looked for medications in the apartment but found nothing. Looked for medical prescriptions, nothing. Could he be lying about the treatment? But why would he lie? I tried asking about the doctor. "Robert, who's the doctor treating you? Maybe I could go with you to an appointment to better understand what's happening." He got irritated. "You don't need to go. It's a man thing. You wouldn't understand. And please, stop talking about this. You promised you'd stop pressuring me. I felt small again. He was right. I had promised. So I went back to pretending everything was fine, but inside, I was falling apart. The nights were the worst. Lying next to him, feeling the warmth of his body so close but so far, feeling rejected, ugly, useless. Some nights I'd cry quietly, face buried in the pillow so he wouldn't hear. Other nights I'd stay awake just staring at the ceiling, wondering what was wrong with me. On our 1-year anniversary, I tried to make a special night. I cooked his favorite dish, set the table with candles, wore something nice. After dinner, I was more direct than ever. Robert, today marks 1 year since we got married. 1 year, and we still haven't. I'm still not your wife completely. This can't continue like this. He pushed his plate away, losing his appetite. Sarah, please don't ruin the night. I'm not ruining it. I'm trying to save our marriage. This isn't normal. We're married. Married people do these things. He got up from the table abruptly. You think I don't know that? You think I don't feel bad? That I don't feel like a failure as a man? I'm trying, Sarah. I'm trying to fix it, but you constantly demanding only makes everything worse. I started crying. I just want to understand. I just want to know if it's something I did, if it's something about me that repulses you. He went pale. It's not you. It was never you. The problem is me, and I'll fix it. I just need more time. More time, always more time. I'd already given a year of time. How much more did he need? But again, I swallowed my frustration, my pain, my confusion. I'm sorry, I said quietly. I don't want to pressure you. He came back to the table, finished dinner in silence. That night we slept each turned to our side of the bed, with an abyss between us that seemed to grow every day. The following months were more of the same. Work routine, church, a marriage that was marriage in name only. My mother was getting impatient. I don't understand why you don't have children yet. You're 26. You can't wait too long, or it'll get harder. I made up that we were trying, but it wasn't happening. She suggested I see a doctor, that maybe I had a problem. I went to a gynecologist to do some tests, more to get my mother off my back than because I believed the problem was me. The doctor, after examining me, said I was perfectly healthy and fertile. Actually, she said something that confused me even more. You mentioned you've been married over a year and trying to get pregnant, but according to the exam, your hymen is still intact. I froze. What? You're still a virgin, Sarah. I felt the world spin. What do you mean? I'm married. She looked at me with an expression that mixed pity and concern. I know you're married, but physically you've never had relations. This is unusual. Is everything okay at home? I lied that yes and left there in shock. A virgin. After more than a year of marriage, I was still a virgin, and the pieces finally started falling into place. Robert didn't have any health problem. He simply didn't want to be with me. The question I couldn't answer was, why? After the gynecologist appointment, I went home in a state of shock. Robert hadn't arrived from work yet. I sat on the couch and stayed there looking at nothing, processing that information. Virgin. More than a year of marriage, and I remained a virgin. It wasn't normal. It couldn't be normal. And for the first time, I allowed the doubt I'd been suffocating for months to surface with full force. Robert was lying. He didn't have any health problem. But then what? Why would a man marry and not touch his wife? I started paying attention to things I'd previously ignored, small details my brain had registered, but I'd swept under the rug. The way Robert avoided any situation that could lead to intimacy. How he never saw me change clothes, always left the room when I was going to get dressed. How he took long showers, sometimes twice a day, locked in the bathroom. How his gaze never lingered on my body, even when I was in a nightgown. There were also the increasingly frequent outings. Robert had started going out alone on Saturday afternoons, saying he was visiting a friend from the company. He'd come back late, close to midnight, always with the same excuse. They were talking, and time got away. I'd never questioned it because I trusted him. But now, with the seed of distrust planted, I started questioning everything. I tried looking for clues in the apartment, went through his drawers when I was home alone. I looked for letters, photos, anything that would explain his behavior. I only found normal things, documents, bills, some old family photos, nothing suspicious. But in a box at the back of the closet, I found something that made me stop. They were magazines, men's magazines, the kind that came in plastic bags and were sold at newsstands with scantily clad women on the cover. My first thought was strange relief. So he did feel attraction. To women. It meant that maybe the problem really was me, that I didn't attract him, but other women did. That conclusion was painful, but at least it made some sense. I put the magazines back and didn't say anything, but it kept circling in my head. If he felt attraction to women, why not to me? It was Patricia who brought up another possibility I'd never considered. We were on lunch break, and I'd told her about the doctor's appointment, about still being a virgin. She was silent for a while, then said, "Sarah, I'm going to ask you a difficult question. Don't get mad at me. Have you considered the possibility that your husband doesn't like women?" I looked at her without understanding. "What do you mean doesn't like?" "That he likes men." It took me a few seconds to process what she was suggesting. I felt my face get hot. "No, Robert isn't. He can't be. He's a Christian. He goes to church." Patricia took my hand. "Sarah, there are plenty of Christian people who are gay. The two things aren't mutually exclusive. I know it's hard for you to consider, especially with how you were raised. But think about it. Why would a man marry and never touch his wife? Why would he avoid every form of intimacy?" I shook my head vehemently. "No, that's not it. He loves me. He said he loves me." She sighed. "Loving and desiring are different things, Sarah." I left that lunch break with my head exploding. It couldn't be. Robert couldn't be gay. That word didn't even really cross my mind. At church, homosexuality was a sin, an abomination, something unthinkable. Robert was a man of God. He couldn't be that. But what if he was? What if he'd married me to hide, to seem normal before the church and family? I tried to push those thoughts far away, but they kept coming back like persistent flies. I started observing Robert differently, the way he talked about this friend he visited on Saturdays, John, a guy who also worked at his company. He always spoke of him with special affection in his voice. "John is so smart. John understands me like no one else. John said this. John did that." Was it just friendship, or was there something more? One Saturday, when Robert left again to visit John, I did something I'd never done. I followed him. I waited for him to leave, took the bus in the same direction I saw him take, and tried not to lose sight of him. My heart was beating so hard I thought I'd faint. He got off the bus in a neighborhood I didn't know well, walked a few blocks, and entered a building. I stayed across the street, hidden behind a tree, feeling ridiculous and desperate at the same time. I stayed there for almost an hour, not knowing what to do, until I saw him come out of the building, but he wasn't alone. He was with a tall, blonde, handsome guy with glasses. They were laughing, talking animatedly. And then I saw something that made my world stop. The guy put his hand on Robert's back in a gesture that was too intimate to be just friendship. Robert didn't pull away. Actually, he seemed comfortable with the touch. They said goodbye at the building entrance, and Robert headed to the bus stop. I ran home. I got there before him. I sat on the couch trying to process what I'd seen. When he arrived, he came in cheerful, whistling. "Hi, honey. Sorry I'm late. Time flew." I looked at him, and for the first time in a year and a half of marriage, I felt anger. Real anger. "How was the visit with John?" I asked, observing his reaction. He didn't show anything out of the ordinary. "It was good. We talked about work, about some football stuff." Liar, I thought, but said nothing. In the following days, I paid even more attention. I noticed Robert received calls on the landline that he always answered in another room, speaking quietly. Once, when he was in the shower, the phone rang and I answered. The voice on the other end was male, young. "Hello, is Robert there?" "He's in the shower. Want to leave a message?" There was a pause. "No, I'll call back." And hung up. When Robert came out of the shower, I mentioned, "Someone called for you." A man's voice, "Didn't leave a message." I saw him tense for a split second. "Must be from work. I'll call back later." It was becoming increasingly obvious he was hiding something. And I was increasingly convinced that Patricia was right, but I still didn't have the courage to confront him. I was afraid of the truth, afraid my life would crumble, afraid of what people would say, afraid of the church's judgment. So I continued pretending I didn't see the signs, that I didn't suspect anything. But the tension at home kept increasing. We fought more over small things. Robert was more irritated, more emotionally distant too. There were days we barely talked. The house, which should be a home of love, was becoming a prison for both of us. I felt lonely even being married. I slept next to him every night, but it was like sleeping next to a stranger. My mother started noticing something was very wrong. She called me to her house one Sunday after service. "Sarah, sit here. I need to talk to you. What's happening with you and Robert? You're not well. Everyone at church is noticing." I tried to lie one more time. "Everything's fine, Mom." She shook her head. "It's not. You're unhappy. You've lost too much weight. You have dark circles. You don't smile anymore. And where's that grandchild you promised me?" I couldn't take it anymore. I started crying right there. A desperate cry that came from months of hidden suffering. My mother hugged me, scared. "What is it, daughter? What did this man do to you? Does he hit you?" I shook my head. "Worse than that, Mom. He doesn't touch me." "He's never touched me, not once in a year and a half." She pulled away, looking at me confused. "What do you mean he doesn't touch you? You're married." "I know," I cried harder. "But he always has an excuse, always says he has a health problem. But I went to the doctor and found out I'm still a virgin, Mom. A virgin." My mother went white. "That's not possible. You sleep in the same bed?" "We do. But he doesn't want anything with me, and I can't take it anymore. I feel ugly, rejected, useless. I don't know what to do anymore." She was silent for a long time, processing. Finally she said, "This isn't normal, Sarah. A man who doesn't touch his wife is either with someone else or—" She didn't finish the sentence, but I knew what she was going to say. "Or, it's something else," I completed. She looked me in the eyes. "Do you suspect something?" I told her about the visits to John, about the touch I saw, about the mysterious calls, about how Robert avoided any intimacy with me. My mother listened with an increasingly serious expression. When I finished, she sighed deeply. "Sarah, you need to confront this man. You need to demand the truth, because whatever the truth is, you deserve to know. You deserve to live a real life, not this lie." I shook my head. "I'm afraid, Mom, afraid of what I'll find out." "I understand. But fear can't paralyze you forever." She was right. I couldn't keep living in that uncertainty, that anguish. I had to confront Robert once and for all. I had to demand the truth no matter how painful, because the lie was killing me inside. I left my mother's house determined. That night, when Robert got home from work, I was going to talk, demand answers, end that marriage farce. But when I got home, I found something that confirmed my worst suspicions, and that would make the confrontation even more painful than I imagined. When I entered the house that Sunday afternoon, everything seemed normal until I went to the bedroom to put away my purse and saw Robert's cell phone on the bed. He'd forgotten it. It was one of those old cell phones with a keypad that he'd bought a few months ago, saying it was so the company could contact him more easily. I'd never touched his phone. But at that moment, with all the suspicions boiling in my head, I picked up the device. My hand trembled when I opened the messages. There were several messages from a number that had no name, just showed the number. I opened it. The first message said, "Love, I miss you. When are we seeing each other again?" My stomach churned. I scrolled up to see the previous messages. Robert responded. I miss you too, but it's hard to get out without raising suspicions. Tomorrow maybe I can. I kept reading, each word a stab. I love you. I think about you all the time. She doesn't suspect anything. I sat on the bed with wobbly legs. So he had another woman. After everything, after a year and a half making me believe he had a health problem, he was with someone else. I kept reading the messages, each one more painful than the last. There were romantic messages, explicit sexual messages describing things he'd never done with me, things I didn't even really know what they were because I was a virgin. My husband was having a full sex life, just not with me. But then, reading more carefully, I noticed something. The other person always signed the messages as J and used masculine terms. My handsome one, my hot one, my love. John. It wasn't a woman, it was a man. Robert was having an affair with John. I felt nausea so strong I had to run to the bathroom. I threw up everything in my stomach. I sat on the cold bathroom floor, hugging the toilet, crying convulsively. It all made sense now. A horrible, devastating sense, but it made sense. Robert was gay. He'd married me to hide, to have a facade of normalcy before the church and society. I was his cover, the convenient lie that allowed him to live his real life in secret. All those Saturdays, he said he was visiting his friend. He was having romantic encounters. All those nights he slept next to me without touching me, he was probably thinking of him. I stayed there on the bathroom floor for I don't know how long until I heard the front door open. Sarah, are you home? It was Robert. He'd come back to get his phone. I got up trembling, washed my face, and came out of the bathroom. He was in the bedroom looking. Ah, here it is, he said, picking up the phone from the bed. I thought I'd lost it. I looked at him with a mixture of hate and pain I'd never felt before. Were you looking for this? I asked, my voice coming out strange. He noticed something in my tone. I was. Why? I read your messages, Robert. I read them all. I saw the color drain from his face. The phone fell from his hand onto the bed. Sarah, I can explain. Explain what? I screamed, surprising myself with the volume. Explain that you're cheating on me, that you're having an affair with a man, that you used me as a facade for a year and a half? He tried to approach, but I backed away. Don't touch me. Don't you dare touch me. He put his hands over his face, destroyed. I didn't want you to find out like this. Oh, so when did you want me to find out? After 10 years? 20? Never? He sat on the edge of the bed with his head in his hands. I don't know. I was just trying to do the right thing. The right thing? I screamed louder. The right thing would have been not to marry me, not to deceive me, not to destroy my life. He started crying, but I felt no pity. Robert raised his tear-stained face. I didn't want to hurt you, Sarah. I really care about you, just not the way I should. I've been like this since forever. I tried to change, prayed, fasted, asked God to cure me, but it didn't work. I thought if I got married, if I did everything right, maybe the feelings would change, but they didn't. I felt such rage I wanted to scream until my throat hurt. So, you used me as an experiment, as a guinea pig for your gay cure? It wasn't like that. I thought it could work, that I could be a good husband to you. A good husband? You let me spend a year and a half thinking I was ugly, that I was undesirable, that something was wrong with me. You let me destroy myself inside while you had your secret life with your lover. He sobbed louder. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I was a coward. I was selfish, but I was afraid. Afraid of what the church would say, what my family would say. Back then, being this was unthinkable. It was a sin. It was an abomination. I couldn't come out. So you sacrificed me to save your reputation? Is that it? He didn't answer, just kept crying. I stopped screaming. My anger was giving way to a deep sadness, almost unbearable. Since when? I asked, my voice calmer. With John. Since when? He wiped his face with the back of his hand. Since before I married you, we worked together, it became friendship, and then it became more. I tried to end it when I started dating you, but I couldn't. I couldn't stay away from him. I felt my heart break even more. So you were with him the whole time during our courtship, during our marriage? Yes, he whispered. I'm sorry. I took a deep breath, trying to maintain composure. Do you love me in any way? As a person? Yes, you're special to me, Sarah, but not the way a husband should love a wife. I tried, I swear I tried, but I can't feel attraction to women, to anyone who isn't a man. Those words spoken out loud were finally both liberating and devastating. At least now I knew. The truth, as painful as it was in front of me. You need to leave, I said, with a calmness I didn't know where it came from. Now. He stood up, startled. Sarah, we can talk, There's nothing to talk about. You lied to me, deceived me, used me. I don't want you here. Get your things and go. But this is my house too. I paid for it. I don't care. You can have everything. I just want you away from me. He stared at me for a long moment. And are you going to tell? The church? My family? I thought about the question. Part of me wanted to destroy him like he'd destroyed me. Wanted to expose the lie. Wanted everyone to know. But another part, too tired for revenge, just wanted peace. I don't know, I answered honestly. Now leave, please. He started gathering some clothes in a backpack, moving like a zombie. As he was leaving through the door, he stopped. Sarah, I know it doesn't help anything, but I'm truly sorry. I just wish I'd had the courage to be who I am from the beginning. It would have spared a lot of pain for you and for me. Go away and go to hell, I thought but didn't say. I just closed the door in his face. When I heard the sound of the front door closing, I collapsed. I cried like I'd never cried in my life. I cried for the lost years, for the destroyed innocence, for the broken trust. I cried for the 24-year-old girl who'd married full of dreams and who now, at 26, was alone and destroyed. I cried for everything that could have been and never would be. The following days were a blur. I called work saying I was sick. I didn't get out of bed, didn't eat, just cried and slept. My mother showed up on the third day, worried because I hadn't gone to church on Sunday. When she saw the state I was in, she was horrified. What happened? Where's Robert? I told her everything, every horrible detail. She was in shock, not knowing what to say. Finally, after a long silence, she said, "Thank God you found out now, and not 10 years from now with children in the middle." She was right. It could be worse, but at the moment it didn't console me. My mother helped me get up, made me shower, eat something. She called the pastor asking for an urgent meeting. In the meeting with the pastor, he was shocked, but not disbelieving. "Unfortunately, it's not the first time I've seen this happen," he said. "Men trying to suppress who they really are, using marriage as a mask. It's sad for everyone involved." He offered to help with the annulment process. The news spread through the church with frightening speed. Suddenly, everyone knew my marriage had ended, and, although they didn't know the complete details, they speculated. Some people looked at me with pity, others with morbid curiosity, one or two with judgment, as if I was somehow to blame. I stopped attending. I couldn't stand the looks, the whispers, the poorly disguised questions. Robert tried calling me several times. I didn't answer. Until one day he showed up at the store where I worked. Patricia faced him and said if he didn't leave, she'd call security. He left, but before he did, he left a letter. I read it that night. It was a long letter asking forgiveness, explaining that he too was a victim of a society that didn't accept who he was, that he'd done the best he could in the circumstances. It ended saying he was moving to New York City to live with John, to finally be free. He wished I would also find my freedom and happiness. I tore the letter into little pieces. Freedom. He talked about freedom while he'd trapped me in a lie for years. But at the same time, a small part of me understood the desperation of having to hide who you really are, understood the fear, understood the loneliness of living a lie. It didn't justify what he'd done to me, but I understood. And it was that understanding, as painful as it was, that began my healing process, because I realized it wasn't about me. It never had been. It wasn't because I was ugly or undesirable. It was because I was a woman, and he didn't desire women. Simple as that, cruel as that. The following months were of reconstruction, slow, painful, but necessary. I went back to live with my mother temporarily. She welcomed me without judgment, just with a mother's love. My sisters also supported me, each in their own way. The youngest, Julia, spent hours talking with me, trying to make me laugh. The middle one, Fern, more practical, helped me with all the divorce paperwork, which at the time was still complicated and time-consuming. I continued working at the fabric store. Work saved me in many ways. It gave me routine, got me out of the house, made me think about other things. Patricia was my rock during this period. She didn't pity me, didn't treat me like a victim, treated me like a friend. Sometimes we'd have lunch together, and she'd tell me about her own bad experiences, her divorce, how she'd survived. "You'll come out of this stronger," she'd say. "I know it doesn't seem like it now, but you will." I started going to therapy. At the time it wasn't common, especially in my financial reality, but an acquaintance of my mother's was a psychologist and offered to see me for a price I could afford. The sessions were difficult. I had to revisit all that pain, understand my feelings, process the betrayal and the lie. But gradually, I was rebuilding myself, understanding I wasn't to blame for anything, that I'd been a victim of a cruel situation. The psychologist, Dr. Regina, told me something I never forgot. "Sarah, Robert is also a victim of a society that forced him to live a lie, that made him believe who he was wrong, sinful. That doesn't justify what he did to you, but understanding the context helps you not carry anger for the rest of your life. Anger is poison. You can choose not to take that poison with you." Those words freed me in a way I didn't expect. The divorce process took almost a year. Robert didn't contest anything, signed everything he needed to sign. I heard through third parties that he really had moved to New York with John, that he was working there, living the relationship openly. Part of me was angry at the ease with which he restarted his life. But another part, the part that was growing and maturing through therapy, was happy for him. Happy that at least one of us had managed to be authentic. When the divorce finally came through in 1993, I was 27 years old. 3 years had passed since that marriage full of hope. 3 years I considered lost, but Dr. Regina taught me to see it differently. It wasn't lost time, Sarah. It was learning time. You learned about resilience, about strength, about forgiveness. Those lessons will stay with you forever. I started believing that gradually. I decided to truly start over. I left the fabric store and went to work as a secretary at a school. It paid a bit better, and I liked the environment. I met new people, made friends outside the church circle, started dressing differently, wearing makeup, taking better care of myself. Not for anyone, but for myself. I wanted to look in the mirror and like what I saw. It was at the school that I met Paul. He was a math teacher, 32 years old, also divorced, and had a 7-year-old daughter. He was a simple man, balding, a bit chubby, but with a sincere smile and gentle eyes. He started making innocent conversation about the weather, about the students, about work. Gradually, we got closer. We'd have coffee together during break, have lunch in the school cafeteria, laughing at inside jokes. One day, he invited me out, just a movie on a Saturday afternoon. I panicked. I hadn't been out with any man since the divorce. I was afraid, traumatized, insecure. I talked to Dr. Regina in therapy. "You don't have to go if you don't want to," she said. "But if you want to, know that it's not a betrayal of your past. You have the right to be happy, to try again." I decided to go. The date was wonderfully normal. We watched a movie, ate popcorn, talked afterward at a diner. Paul was easy to talk to, funny, interested in really getting to know me. He didn't try anything beyond a quick kiss at the end of the night when he dropped me off at home. He was respectful, kind, everything I needed. I left there with butterflies in my stomach and fear at the same time. We started dating slowly. Paul knew my story. I'd told him everything in the first few weeks. He listened without judging, without asking invasive questions. He just said, "That must have been very difficult, but you survived. You're a strong woman." With him, for the first time, I didn't feel broken. I felt seen. Intimacy was a challenge. Even after years, even divorced, I was still a virgin. I still had fear, insecurity about my body, about being desirable. Paul was patient, didn't rush me, didn't pressure me, waited until I was ready. And when we finally were together for the first time, at 29 years old, 7 years after getting married the first time, it was special. It wasn't perfect, it was awkward and nervous, but it was real. It was with someone who truly desired me, who wanted to be with me. I married Paul 2 years later, in 1995. It was a civil ceremony, simple, just with close family. I didn't want a church, didn't want a big party, just wanted to celebrate with the people I loved. And this time, it was real. It was true. We had 2 children, now adults and independent. We built a beautiful life together, with ups and downs like every marriage has, but with honesty always. Paul died 4 years ago from cancer. I miss him every day. About Robert, I heard he lived with John for many years in New York. Word reached me through mutual acquaintances that they were happy, that they had their own business, that they lived openly. I was genuinely happy for him. I didn't hold a grudge. It took time, but I managed to forgive. Not for what he did, but for myself, because carrying anger only hurt me. Robert passed away in 2010, also from cancer. I went to the funeral. John was there, devastated, being consoled by friends. When he saw me, he didn't know if he should approach. I approached him. "I'm sorry," I said. "He loved you very much." John started crying. "Thank you. He always spoke of you with respect, always said you were a special person, that you deserved more than he could give." That comforted me in a strange way. Today, at 59 years old, I look back and see those 3 years of marriage with Robert not as lost time, but as part of my journey. Was it painful? It was. Was it unfair? Completely. But it also taught me valuable lessons. It taught me about compassion, about forgiveness, about resilience. It taught me that life is rarely black and white, that people are complex, that we're all fighting invisible battles. I also learned about the cruelty of a society that forces people to live lies. Robert wasn't a monster. He was a gay man in a time and community where being gay was unthinkable. He made wrong choices, yes. He hurt me deeply, but he also suffered. And recognizing that doesn't diminish my pain, but it allows me to live in peace. If there's anything I'd like to say to anyone going through something similar, it's this: you're not alone. And it's not your fault. If you're in a marriage without intimacy, if you feel something's wrong, trust your instincts. Seek help, talk, demand truth, because you deserve to live an authentic life with someone who loves and desires you completely. And if you're someone living a lie, hiding who you really are out of fear of judgment, know that the truth always liberates. It may be painful at first, may cost relationships, may be difficult, but living authentically is the only path to true happiness. And involving other people in your lie only multiplies the pain. I don't hold resentment toward Robert. I hope that wherever he is, he found peace. And I hope John was also able to move forward after the loss. We all deserve love. We all deserve to be who we really are. And we all deserve truth. My story isn't unique. I know many women and men have gone through and go through similar situations, facade marriages, lives lived in lies, years lost trying to make something work that was broken from the start. But I want you to know it's possible to start over. It's possible to find happiness again. It's possible to forgive and move forward. Today I live alone, but not lonely. I have my children, my grandchildren, my friends. I have a life full of meaning and purpose, and when I look in the mirror, I like the woman I see. A woman who survived, who grew, who learned, who forgave. A strong woman, not because she never fell, but because she always got up. Those 3 years of marriage with Robert seem like a lifetime ago now. They were difficult, they were painful, they almost destroyed me, but they didn't. And in the end, they made me who I am today. And for that, in a strange way, I'm grateful. Grateful for the pain that taught me strength, grateful for the betrayal that taught me truth, grateful for the end that allowed me a new beginning. If you're listening to me and going through something similar, know this: it will pass. The pain isn't eternal. Healing is possible. And on the other side of the storm, there's sunshine, there's life, there's new beginnings. Believe that. Believe in yourself, because you're stronger than you imagine and deserve much more than crumbs of love or lies disguised as marriage. Thank you for listening to me until here. I hope my story can help someone find courage to seek truth, to demand respect, to start over when necessary, because life is too short to be lived in lies. And we all deserve to live in truth, even if it hurts at first, because only in truth is there real freedom.